Hi everybody and welcome to Writing with Steve, with me Steve Evans, and yes, it is official, I do have legs. We're outdoors, it's fantastic, it's the first time that we've left the studio. So today we're going to look at, because we're going to make the most of this opportunity, we're going to look at place and how place is so important in establishing not only setting, but place is so important for creating a tone, creating a mood with your writing, and lots of authors have been associated with a particular location. So for example, think of William Wordsworth, always associated as one of the lake poets. Also Beatrix Potter from that area, Cumbria, the Lake District. If you're thinking of other writers like Daphne du Maurier, even though she wasn't born in Cornwall, she is strongly associated with that area. Also, places can be great prompts to writing, and more of that later. So here we are in Northern Doon. So people who are viewing who may be unfamiliar with Manchester and the UK, Northern Doon is roughly 5 miles outside Manchester. We are in Manchester, but Manchester city centre is over there. The river this way will take you to Stockport, and the river that way will take you down to Liverpool. So a place can be a great inspiration for your writing. It's really important that when you are exploring your own area, that you do carry a notebook to record your thoughts and what you observe. Particularly if you've lived in that location for a while, because if you do live in a location for a while, you may overlook really important features of that town or that city. So for example, Northern Doon in the 1920s was a tourist destination, believe it or not. And the River Mersey was a tourist destination from people from Manchester who would come and boat up and down here in the 1920s and 1930s. Amazing to think of, but then it was a big draw for huge crowds of people who would gather around the river. And there are still clues here. So for example, in front of me over there, I can see steps that lead down to the river, which would have been used by people to board those boats. So always be mindful of what you see. I think being used to an area has its advantages, but it also has its disadvantages. And that's why a notebook is really important. I think if you are new to an area, I think that's a great advantage, because you can describe the area through a new pair of eyes to people who may overlook or no longer see that area in the way you describe, and that can be a revelation to them. So writing about your area is great. So this area has been a great inspiration for me and for my writing. At the moment I'm going to take you into parts of the town in Northern Doon where I write, and I'm going to show you how your own location, your own area can be a great source of inspiration, and how you can connect with that area. Remember, areas, landscapes, buildings, they all want to share a conversation with you. So they're all having a conversation. Writing about an area, writing about a building is really having a dialogue with that building and creating a story around it, or telling a real story about that place, which we'll come to in a few moments. So here we are outside the beautiful and historic church of St Wilfreds in Northern Doon, beside a Victorian postbox. There's been a church here for 1,000 years. And it's been, for me, a great inspiration for my writing, because I've just finished a guided walkbook of Northern Doon. So I've had to research the area and I found out some astonishing facts. So, would you like to hear a story about murder and body snatching? Of course you don't. I won't tell you. Okay, come closer to me and I'll tell you all about it. This is a true story. On the 26th of February 1902, a man named Dyson was murdered by his disgraced, dismissed servant, a man called Augustus Karol. It happened a quarter of a mile away from this very spot. Karol had been dismissed because he had a bad temper. People in the village despised him because he was so argumentative. In fact, he earned the name Old Kruger because he was the only person in the entire area who supported the Boers during the Boer War. He was dismissed from service because he'd argued with all the other servants and upset them. So Karol was bitter, resentful about his master. On the morning, 26th of February 1902, he sneaked into his master's home. He knew the layout. He knew that the front door was more often than not open. This is a time when people left their doors unlocked. It was a peaceful, rural area. He went into the house. He sneaked into the front room. He knew where his master kept a set of pistols. He took the pistols, marched up to the stairs, opened the chamber of his master, who was still in the state of dressing himself, and he shot his master dead. 2 shots into the body, into the head. His master was murdered. Karol ran down the stairs. Of course, it caused consternation, the uproar around the household. The servants were beside themselves with grief. They were screaming what was going on. He'd also taken some spare pistols with him. A hue and cry went out around the village. The full might of the Northern Doon constabulary, that was 1 sergeant and 2 constables, were called out and gave chase to Karol. By this time, they too were armed by the spare pistols in Dyson's home. The servants had armed them. A gun battle ensued along what we call Longley Lane. In the course of the battle, Karol was shot dead. Different accounts tell us of how he ended his life. The first one is that he was fatally wounded. He lay beside a oak tree, propped up there, and he decided to take his own life before the police arrested him. The second version is that the police caught up with him, found him injured, and dispatched him without any hesitation, shot him dead. Now, the story gets curiouser and curiouser, if that was not enough. To start with, as we said, Karol was immensely unpopular in this area. Dyson, a solicitor, a professional, was liked hugely. He was also engaged to be married later in the year. So, for all these reasons, resentment built up about Karol. Karol's body had been moved to a stable yard and stabled in the stables, awaiting his collection to be taken to Manchester. That evening, angry and drunk, many of the villagers came back into the village, sneaked in to where the stables were. They broke open the stables door, grabbed the body and proceeded to kick it down the lane in the direction of the River Mersey. They were going to dump it, throw it in the water and wash it away. Suddenly, there was a rumour that they'd been rumbled, the police were returning. So hastily, they dumped the body under a hedge and they ran away. Two accounts of this. The first account is that they left it on the village green where it was found by a courting couple, which kind of disturbed their evening of romance. The second was that it was left under some hedgerows. I really like the first story. Being a writer, of course, you like the first story. You know, they've got so much drama in that. Anyway, the body was returned to the stables, where it lay for the rest of the night under police guard. The following morning, the police, fearing a return of such disruption and fearing a return to civil unrest, decided to hastily bury the body. Where they buried the body? They buried the body in an unmarked grave right behind the Victorian postbox. And from that day onwards, there arose a superstition in this village that if children were naughty or errant, they would be punished by Cottrell. So parents used Cottrell like a bogeyman. If a child was misbehaving, the child would be sent on a mission to post a letter here. And if the child put his hand here and they'd been naughty, Cottrell would smash and grab them. So it was a great bogeyman story, and it was a great way of controlling naughty children. And this tradition has continued. It's something that we still talk about, and it's still honoured at Halloween, and it makes a fantastic Halloween story. So for me, this story provided fantastic writing material. It was a brilliant resource, and it was fantastic for my guidebook. Do you have a favourite location or setting that inspires your writing? If you do, I'd really like to know. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please press the like button and subscribe. And if you like this video, why not check out our other video on describing places and people. Really pleased to be joined by Karol, and I think she thought she'd got away with this, but it'd be fantastic if she could introduce herself for the viewers. Dun 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 dun.